Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. I apologize for that, but we do have a really interesting discussion around the future of telecom and network infrastructure, a brand new approach with Boldyn Networks. Justin, how are you?
Hi, Evan. Very well, thank you.
Nice to have you here. You're in London, I'm in Boston, two places with less than ideal weather, I imagine. But let's dive in. Maybe introduce yourself and who is Baldwin for the folks watching?
Yeah, sure. And you're right. Not a lot of natural light at the moment in both of these cities, and definitely not a lot in London. But we're used to that. No, thanks a lot for having me. Look, a brief introduction about myself and Boldyn. So I'm the Group Chief Strategy Officer of Boldyn Networks. I've been working in the industry and for the company for 7 years now. Boldyn is a global, telecom infrastructure provider. So what we do is we design, we build, we fund networks, and we operate and maintain those networks for others. So mostly for mobile operators, but also for enterprise customers. To bring it to life, a number of our key projects are in the transport environment. So we're currently building a network in the TfL, in the tube in London, to bring 4G and 5G connectivity to all the riders in the tube, whether it's in stations or in the tunnels. And we're doing the same in other transits in the world, in New York, the MTA, or in San Francisco. We're also building networks in big sports stadium and arenas in the US, in the UK, and working, with city municipalities and enterprise to deliver this network connectivity. So Boldyn is an old company that has its roots in Australia. Used to be an Australian company focused on
Hmm.
broadcast infrastructure in the past, and in the last 2 3 years, we've really grown into the northern hemisphere through some acquisitions, through some big wins of project as well, and we came to a point where really we had actually a number of brands in the market, and that's when we decided that it was a good time to rebrand and to speak with one identity to the market, and that's where Boldyn actually comes from, and that's we've had this name for only 6 months now, so it's relatively fresh rebranding.
Oh, interesting. So we're off to the races with a new rebrand. I think you had an acquisition or two recently we'll talk about. But before that, maybe let's explain the fundamentals of a neutral host. Kind of a new concept, although it's been around for a while. It's really gaining traction. How does it differ from traditional network infrastructure, data center provisioning, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you're right. It's been around for a while. It's gaining a lot of traction. It's still a bit of a jargon. What do we talk about? What is a neutral host? So, I mean, essentially what we do is we build networks, as I said, on behalf of others or for others. For example, the network that we build in a place like the London Tube or the New York subway, we build this infrastructure once, with the antennas, the cabling,
Mm.
the technical rooms, etc. And then the mobile operators, any communication service providers can actually come and utilize this infrastructure. So we're neutral in the way that we ourselves, Boldyn, are not, a CSP. We're not an operator. We don't have any, B2C business. But we build those networks that can then be used by others. And that's you're right. That's a model that is gaining traction, mostly because it's a good model where you don't have a lot of space. If you think about again, the tunnels in a subway,
Mm.
it's going to be difficult to have multiple operators come and build their infrastructure. But it's also true in some sports stadiums or even hotels, convention centers, etc. There's a real logic in having one piece of infrastructure built once and shared by the providers. And there's also an obvious cost benefits to doing that. Being able to share the cost of this infrastructure, which is appealing to mobile operators.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's particularly appealing now as, we've sunk a lot of money in 5G and we have to figure out the next steps in the industry. And a lot of that involves, like you said, going underground, going indoors, millimeter wave, high density, high capacity kind of is the next big thing. How do you work in the 5G space in particular and expanding and deploying the next phase of networks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we do work a lot, as I said, with the mobile operators on both sides of the pond, actually, in the US and in the UK. And there is a lot going on, you're right, in terms of 5G deployment. There has been a lot going on already, especially in the US, where all the mobile
Mm,
carriers have upgraded their existing infrastructure, their macro sites, as it's called, to the 5G technology. And that puts a lot of pressure on their finances. Those are huge investments to get to that. But the next phase of 5G is going to come, and as you rightly say, there is going to be a need for what we call densification of the networks. Which is coping with all of this increase in data consumption, bringing
mm,
5G into the buildings, etc. Also, like dense urban environment like New York, San Francisco, LA, etc. Having the ability to provide not just coverage, not just 5G coverage, but also the right capacity to all the users. So there is a second wave of investment that is going to be required. And yes, we see that pressure on the mobile operators, which is why the neutral host model that I described makes even more sense. There's no doubt that they will need to continue to invest, and they will need to continue to deploy this network. And neutral host can propose a good solution, as I said, both in terms of space utilization, also cost, and also just taking overall all of the projects end to end of finding the right places to deploy these new antennas, deploy them, operate and maintain them. So in the next phase of 5G, where you're going to see a lot of what we call small cells come about in city centers, whether it's in the city of London, where we're doing some work with the operators, or in the States. There's going to be a big role to play for neutral host, and we know we're clearly working on that with the operators.
fantastically interesting. Um, so your business model, your network sounds pretty complex to say the least. I mean, how do you work with the different technology partners and collaborators and carriers to kind of deliver these services? Maybe give us a sneak behind the peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we are we're working hand in hand when we talk about network that we deploy for the mobile operators. We're working hand in hand with them. There are
Mm,
customers, but we view ourselves as partner, and we help them meet the demand, design in the most efficient way, which means there's a lot of collaboration.
mm,
As a neutral host, we consider ourselves to be technology agnostic,
mm,
which, what does that mean? It means that, it's not that we don't have any opinions on technology. And, we have quite big, technology team and design teams, and we work with all the vendors of the world. And, we are at the forefront of technology evolution. But we're not wedded to a particular vendor. We're not locked
mm,
into a technology and having said no to another evolution. We're quite flexible in designing what makes the most sense for any deployment. So when we go into the underground in New York, or in London, or when we go into a particular venue where we need to deploy network for the operators, well, we're going to work hand in hand with the operators and some of our technology partners to find the best, the most suitable technical solution for that particular context.
oh, fantastic. So you talk a lot about smart cities on your website, which is really interesting and huge opportunity for transformation, but it's been slow. It's been slow in a lot of Western cities where, there's a lot of legacy history to kind of overcome, politics and more. So, but what's your vision of how do you build a smart city with leading network infrastructure and support 5G and the Internet of Things and new applications? Like, what's your pitch there?
Yeah, I mean, hard to disagree with you. If you think that the neutral host term has been around a little bit, smart cities probably been around for decades now, and it's quite slow to take off. And the reason is, that I think everybody understands the concept of smart city, of bringing it to life making sure that there's a coherent platform built in a city that enables all that is difficult because there's a lot of stakeholders at
Hmm.
play. Investment cycles take a long time. So we're lucky enough that we've got a great partner in the UK, in the city of Sunderland. We've got a 20 plus year partnership with them that we signed a couple of years ago. And what's really interesting is that the drive for the smart city program in Sunderland comes from the top. There is a clear vision at the top of the city. The chief exec of the city is driving that personally with a real belief and a real understanding that it requires investment in that infrastructure layer before you can then deploy multiple use cases on top of that infrastructure. So what we're doing in Sunderland is we've built a number of networks, different technology. I mean, starting with Wi-Fi, which is pretty obvious, but having good quality Wi-Fi throughout the city center is a good place to start. Also 5G and also some IoT networks. And then we're working with the different parts of the city and municipalities to imagine, test, and then deploy, different use cases. And it can go from things like, measuring the temperature on the road, because up there in the north of England, in Sunderland, it can get quite cold in winter, and so having some good readings on that can be helpful for the city and know when to deploy trucks to go on the road. Smart beans is also another application we've deployed, and it goes to things like um, smart care and looking at how to care for patients that are coming out of hospitals, and implementing some IoT sensors in their home so that they can be monitored remotely, saving some spaces in hospital in turn. So there's a whole range of use cases that we're imagining with the city of Sunderland. Now, the city of Sunderland I shouldn't say small city, because if they see
Hmm.
that they won't like it, but it's a medium sized, a city which makes it like a great testing ground for this. Now, if you think about expanding this kind of approach to the side of a city like London or New York, obviously it's going to be a bit more difficult. But there are still, some pieces of underlying infrastructure that can be deployed, and we are working with those cities as well, to deploy that, and then together, think about the use cases, whether it's CCTV or use case for police and law enforcement, and then all the quality of life for the citizens that we can do. So there's still a long way to go. We've got this really really interesting, incredibly interesting project in Sunderland that we're leveraging to learn more about the actual recipe to be successful there.
Oh, fantastic, and good luck with that. One of the little secrets in telecom is that when you get 5G or mobile connectivity that's slow, it's often the transport, the backhaul, that's the real bottleneck, not the radio and the capacity and the RF. You do a lot of work in that area. Tell us how that's, transport side of the network looks.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work in that area. You're right. Like our network, especially the ones that we build, in places like the tube in London, or other transit areas. There's quite a lot of work to do on the backhaul and ensuring that we've got enough capacity, which leads us to have deployed actually quite a lot of fiber optic in some of these
Hmm.
places as well. Usually, as I said, with the primary purpose of ensuring the right backhaul for those networks. There comes a point where at the end of the day, we interconnect with the mobile operators, which are our customers who use our infrastructure, and that backhaul challenge becomes theirs. But as a neutral host, we have the commitment to make sure that every single antenna, every single RF part of the network that we design, has the right backhaul, no issue there, so that we can get safely the signal back to our customers, as I say.
Fantastic. You mentioned stadium connectivity as well. That's a hot topic. Wi-Fi, lots of 5G, private 5G being deployed. Probably you've seen it all. I'm amazed that, like a Taylor Swift concert, the network just doesn't melt down. So I don't know. You guys must be doing the right thing How challenging is that for a new deployment or an overlay or an upgrade?
Yeah, I mean it's super challenging. And when you think about when you think about it, if you think about a subway, well, there are people in a subway almost every day of the year. Yes, there
Hmm.
are peaks during the day, but it's a venue that is really used. A stadium is essentially there's a game every now and then. There are some
Hmm.
concerts. You need to build those networks to be able to you suddenly have those, can be up to 80,000 people. I was in SoFi Stadium in LA just a few weeks ago. It's just impressive, those new massive stadiums that are being built. And so suddenly you've got 80,000 people here, and guess what? They're here to watch a game or a concert, but what they will mostly do is just get their phone out and send text and send pictures and download pictures from other people, etc. So yeah, it is challenging. It's from a capacity of the network, and then that's where RF design is also quite important. Where should you put which antenna, what type of new technology could you deploy to ensure that you can suddenly capture that and not have the network meltdown, because that's what the mobile operators pay us for, is to have a very reliable infrastructure that can support that. So you mentioned also Wi-Fi, and you mentioned private 5G, which private 5G is for us like a big trend that we're looking into. So a lot of what we've done, and we're still doing, obviously, is deploying networks that the mobile operators, the AT&T and T-Mobile and EE and Three and Vodafone here in the UK use for their customers. But a big trend that we see is also deploying these private 5G, which are a 5G network, but deployed just for the enterprise customer who want like a fast, reliable, and secure network for their own operational needs. And we see the demand growing for this in stadiums, but also in a lot of enterprise customers. Like mines, ports, airports, manufacturing facilities, etc. That realize that yes, it's an investment to build yourself your own little 5G network, but it can have a great impact, and there's a business case for that, because it can lead to savings, efficiency, increased safety, etc. So that's an area that we are really expanding into as well.
Oh, that's super interesting. And I was surprised to see you're also working in the enterprise with enterprise clients directly. How does that work in your go-to-market?
Yeah, so that's the private 5G that I mentioned
Okay.
for enterprise, and it's an interesting adjacency for us as a neutral host, because we're used to going and funding and deploying networks in difficult places most of the time, like a stadium, a subway. So there's a natural step into going and deploying these kind of networks in a mine, in a port, in a manufacturing plant, etc. But you're right that from a go-to-market perspective, this is different. We're used to build a network for mobile operators, and this is about going and working together with an enterprise customer, as I said, to make them realize that investing into a 5G network of their own can be quite a significant investment, but it's usually you don't invest in the network for the network's sake. Like a port or a mine doesn't need a network to have a network. They need a network, a fast, reliable, and secure network, so that they can deploy a new generation of cameras, smart cameras, or new robots that are going to go around in the mine, and all of that generates savings or increase in productivity. So it's always a business case. They need to work with customers in enterprise, so they see the benefit of deploying a 5G network, enabling some use cases, and down the line, enabling some a return on this investment. So it's an interesting, slightly different dynamic to other things we do, but a very natural extension of our business that we're very bullish about.
Fantastic. You operate globally. That's no easy task, particularly, every country has its own idiosyncrasies and requirements and players. How have you pulled that off?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's not easy to do that. But having said that, the mobile operators customer that we work with are different, whether we are in the US or in the UK. The challenges that they face are similar, and the technology that we deploy in different parts of the world is similar. So I think there's a real benefit in bringing expertise that we can deploy. For example, we've built several dozens of stadiums in the US. I mean, networks in stadium in the US. That's a
Mm.
capability that we've been able to bring to the UK and demonstrate that we've got a know-how, we know the right technology providers, we understand the challenges, and the stadium, yes, stadiums are a bit different in both sides of the Atlantic, but there are stadiums and operators have similar challenges that we can work with them on. So it's always difficult to lead a global business, but in what we do, there's a lot that we can leverage,
Mm.
from one place to the other, and synergies we can bring, and relationship with technology providers. So there's a lot of logic in having this global business, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. So what's next for Boldyn? What's on your radar? You just made an acquisition recently. Lots of obviously new deployments happening. What are you looking forward to over the next couple months?
Yeah, I mean, I think the acquisition that you referenced to is an acquisition we just made from Cellnex in Europe, from their private network business, which is a echoes everything I've just said about our excitement about this part of the industry. We're very bullish about this, and I think that's an area where we really want to expand going forward. So this acquisition is part of this plan, and we intend to grow this B2B part of our business, this enterprise segment of our business in the next few years. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot to do, a lot of work to do in our existing markets, in the US, in the UK, Italy, where we have big plans of things we're going to do with the mobile operators. We've actually just signed a concession in Rome as well, where we're
Mm.
going to work and deploy 5G connectivity in the Rome subway, bring Wi-Fi and 5G connectivity to some of the historic squares in Rome, and some of the buildings there.
Oh
So
wow.
there's
Well, if,
plenty
if,
to
if you
do
if
in
you
that.
need an advisor to kind of oversee the social media side, I'll be happy to volunteer for the Rome
Absolutely, yeah. We'll reach out to
deployments.
you. So
What
in
about
the
you? Any travel coming up? Obviously you got MWC is probably the next big event,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm sure you
Well,
have lots going on over the next month, travel wise.
yeah, well, hoping to take a break at the end of the year, because it's been pretty full on with our rebrand, our acquisition, and integration of our businesses. So it's been pretty full on this year. So looking forward to a bit of time off. But then you're right. There's the travel plan is already starting to fill up next year. We spend quite a bit of time. So I'm based in London, but at least once a month I travel to the States, and work with the team there, meet people. So I'll do that in early January. Mobile World Congress in Barcelona is going to be always a big event. It's almost overwhelming how much there is to see and to do there, but it's always a great time to meet a lot of people. So yeah, and then the rest of Europe is probably where we've got our eyes next. Today we're in the UK, we're in Italy. We see a potential for Boldyn's business model in due course, to expand into France, into Spain, into places like Germany as well, all these big markets in Western Europe. So I think that's going to be a focus for our development in the next few years.
Fantastic. Well, the future looks bright. Thanks so much for sharing the vision and insight, strategy, fascinating stuff. And thanks for your time. And thanks everyone for watching. Reach out to Boldyn Networks with any questions you might have. Take
Thanks so
care.
much
Have a
for that.
great week. Thank you.